Explained by the Meier contacts, mysteries, myths, legends, conspiracy theories, historical inaccuracies, and more. Compiled by David Chance, revised October 18, 2023.
Curse of the Pharaohs, the King Tut's Curse. Contact Report 052.
Does a curse of the pharaohs exist?
There is no curse of the pharaohs. This is just a fantastic concoction of legendary nature, as usual created by human beings of the earth, who believe in recognizing some kinds of secrets and mysteries in all things, because of still being caught too much in their religious fantasies, etc. Well, there have always repeatedly been deaths when the tombs of the pharaohs were robbed, also by your scientists, because they too conducted robbery of tombs. That can partially be put down to provoked accidents, and on the other hand, to the protection measures of the ancient pharaohs and priests, who were perfectly aware of the upcoming tomb robberies. For this reason, they created, for example, protective provisions and the like. Thus, for example, they let slaves collect the hair spines from the fruits of Ficus indica cactus and had them, the cactuses, poisoned by poisoners. Afterwards, these spines, impregnated with a millennia-durable deadly poison, were embalmed in the bandages of the deceased pharaohs, and thus those who at a later time would come into contact with them, whereby inevitably the hair-fine spines penetrated into the skin, killing them.
Fantastic. However, with the hairy spines of Ficus indica, are you talking about those fine as hair spines that grow on the surface of the cactus fruit?
Certainly.
Contact Report 250.
Since time immemorial, we have used a bat symbol as a hazard image for radioactivity.
This is interesting. Is this perhaps related to the bat symbols found in ancient Egyptian pictorial writing?
That's right. The bat symbol as a hazard image for radioactivity already existed in our early ancestors who came to Earth from the Lyra regions. The symbol thus found its way into Earth of various peoples, whereby in ancient Egyptian regions in particular, it was used as a warning sign for anything that in any form had to do with radioactivity. Especially the priests of Egypt at that time often handled radioactive materials and then marked their works, etc., with the warning sign of the bat symbol. It was also their own way to mummify the deceased with radioactive substances, which also caused grave robbers to become radioactively contaminated and ill at all times, often resulting in death, which also applies to archaeologists. Thus, the radioactivation of corpses was on the one hand a means of mummification, and on the other hand, also a means of preventing the robbing of corpses and mummies by body and grave robbers, which already existed in very old times. As protection against such robbers served not only the radioactivity, which was won from uranium peckers, uranium mica and carnotite, and is both chemically and radiologically very poisonous, but also extremely long-lived, and many millennia effective poisons and gases were used.
I know. There were pure deadly contact poisons as well as poisons in which Figidindia spines were soaked. That is to say, hair-thin spines of the Indian fig, a cactus fruit. The mummy bandages were then coated with it in order to keep grave robbers away, or to punish them if they desecrated the mummy. The hair-thin thorns penetrated into the skin at the slightest touch and thus spread death. Some poisons were such that they brought agonizing deaths only slowly and over many years, while others brought rapid deaths. Deadly gases were also used, which were immediately released when the mummies or burial objects were touched. These gases were then inhaled by the grave robbers, etc., as well as deadly floating poisons, which immediately impregnated the air if there was even the slightest movement. Well, your explanation should make it clear that the bats, symbols on mummy graves, etc. in Egypt, and the surrounding area have indicated since ancient times that the mummies, etc., are radioactive, and that danger emanates from them.
Contact Report 450.
It is always said that the undamaged tomb of King Tutankhamun was discovered or excavated in 1922 by a sponsored English archaeologist named Howard Carter in the Valley of the Kings. Unfortunately, I do not know the name of the sponsor, but I know that it has always been claimed that both Howard Carter and the sponsor had enriched themselves with the gold and jewelry treasure of the grave goods. Do you know anything about whether these suspicions were made up out of thin air and are therefore pure invention?
There were two men for whom the archaeologist and draftsman Howard Carter worked as excavation director. One was a certain T.M. Davis, and the actual sponsor was a certain G.E. Earl of Carnarvon, and indeed it is true that the assumption is correct, because both Earl of Carnarvon and Howard Carter enriched themselves by stealing grave goods, because they stole gold values as well as jewels and artifacts.
The nonsensical story was then told that Carter, because he desecrated Tutankhamun's tomb, died shortly after the opening of the tomb by a curse that was placed on the tomb.
In fact, a nonsensical story, because the man died of severe blood poisoning because he had contracted a deep infection when he injured himself with his razor.